The day I opened a folder on my company's internal database and saw my own name on a life insurance application I never signed, I knew my brother had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. My name is Daniel Price. I'm 46 years old, senior analyst at a mid-tier insurance firm in Dallas, widower and father to a 17-year-old son named Ethan. For 20 years, my life has been defined by caution. I review policies, calculate risk tables, and double-check signatures. I've built a reputation for never missing details, which is why the details I saw that Tuesday morning nearly stopped my heart. The policy was for a $2 million life insurance payout. Insured, Daniel Price. Beneficiary, Paul Price, my older brother. Paul, 2 years my senior, had always lived louder, riskier. Failed restaurants, gambling debt, sudden investments that turned to dust. I'd bailed him out twice in my 20s, once in my 30s, but after my wife Claire died, I drew a line. My money went to Ethan's future, not Paul's black holes. Now, on my screen, I was staring at a document that claimed I had voluntarily insured my own death to enrich him. At first, I thought it had to be a system glitch, but the application packet was complete. Medical forms, financial disclosures, signatures. My signature on the main contract, and on the spousal consent page, Claire's signature. My wife, who'd been in the ground 5 years, I pushed back from the desk, the office spinning. It wasn't just fraud, it was desecration. The policy had been filed 3 months earlier through an independent broker tied loosely to our company. Had I not stumbled on it while cross-checking unrelated claims, I might never have known until it was too late. Until some accident, some setup, suddenly made me worth $2 million in Paul's pocket. I printed the packet, every page, my hands shaking so badly the copier jammed twice. That evening, Ethan came into the kitchen while I spread the papers across the table. He saw my name, saw the giant dollar figure. "Dad, what is this?" I forced calm into my voice. "It's a mistake, a very bad mistake." But inside, I knew it wasn't a mistake at all. It was Paul. He'd found a way to exploit the industry I worked in, using my trust, even Claire's memory, to fabricate a gold mine. I didn't yet know how deep his plan ran, or who else he'd pulled in to help. But one thing was already certain. My brother had turned my life into a policy he planned to cash. And I wasn't about to let him collect. I didn't wait long. By Thursday evening, I was standing on Paul's porch, folder under my arm, heart thudding like a drum. He opened the door in a golf shirt, beer in hand, smile wide. "Danny boy, you never visit." I shoved the folder into his chest. "Explain." He flipped through the pages casually, as if I'd handed him coupons. "Oh, that. Smart play, huh? $2 million in coverage. Don't worry, you'll live a long life. I just, set up the safety net." My name, Claire's forged signature, beneficiary, you. How the hell is that a safety net? Paul sipped his beer, smirking. "Investments, Danny. It's how the world works. Rich people do this all the time. Policies get bundled, sold, hedged. Your company knows that better than anyone. You'll never notice. Until you're gone, of course. Then Ethan's uncle makes sure he's taken care of." "Taken care of?" I repeated, voice low. "By robbing him of his father?" His smirk sharpened. "You think too small. Stop clinging to morality. This is business." I wanted to hit him. Instead, I stepped back. "Cancel it. Today." He laughed, a sound too loud for the quiet street. "Can't cancel what's already in motion. Premiums are paid. Underwriters approved. Only thing left is..." He leaned closer. "Timing." The word made bile rise in my throat. By Saturday, the story had spread through the family grapevine. but not the way I'd told it. At our cousin's barbecue, I walked into whispers and sidelong glances. Aunt Marianne cornered me by the cooler. "Daniel, honey, is it true you tried to cheat on your taxes and Paul had to step in to protect the family assets?" "What?" I nearly dropped my soda. She nodded earnestly. "Paul said you've been under investigation, that the insurance was a safeguard in case the government came for everything." My jaw clenched. That's a lie. But when I looked around the yard, I saw the damage. Relatives nodded at Paul, laughed at his jokes, clapped him on the back. He had spun my outrage into incompetence, my shock into guilt. Later that evening, I confronted him in the driveway. "You told them I'm under investigation?" He leaned against his BMW, smug. "Perception, Danny. You shout fraud, they think you're paranoid. I say you're unstable with money, they nod. Who's going to believe the widower who works too much over the charming brother who just wants to help?" I stared at him, fists trembling. "You forged Claire's name." "Details," he shrugged. "No one cares. She's gone." That's when I snapped. I lunged forward, grabbed his collar. "Don't you ever say her name like that." He shoved me back, voice rising. "Careful, little brother. You lay a hand on me, I'll spin that too. Violent, unhinged, maybe not fit to manage your son's future." Neighbor's porch lights clicked on. I released him, chest heaving. Paul smoothed his shirt. "Good talk." Then he walked back inside, whistling. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed with texts from cousins and even my mother. "Why are you making trouble? Paul says you're exaggerating. Just drop it." The betrayal cut deeper than any signature forgery. My own blood had decided my word wasn't worth believing. Paul had taken my career, my reputation, even Claire's memory, and turned them into ammunition against me. And worst of all, Ethan had seen enough whispers online to ask me that night, "Dad, did you do something wrong?" The doubt in his eyes shattered me. I knew then, Paul hadn't just stolen my name, he was trying to erase it. The next week was a free fall. It started small. Group chats where I'd once shared memes with cousins went quiet, until I realized I'd been removed entirely. Family events rolled on without me. Photos popped up on Facebook. Paul carving brisket, cousins raising glasses, my mother smiling tight at his side. No one invited me. Then it spread wider. At work, I caught whispers in the break room. A colleague leaned too close to another and muttered, "I heard Price is under IRS review." They fell silent when I entered. Paul's story had legs, and people wanted to believe it. At night, Ethan grew colder. He'd retreat to his room, headphones on, avoiding my eyes. One dinner he finally blurted, "Uncle Paul says you're paranoid, that you hate him because he's successful." I nearly dropped my fork. "Ethan, listen to me. Paul forged your mother's signature. He filed a policy that makes me worth more dead than alive." His jaw tightened. "You sound insane." The words cut deeper than any document. My son, my only reason for breathing, looked at me like I was the fraud. By Friday, even Mom had stopped answering my calls. When I showed up at her house, she cracked the door but didn't let me in. "Daniel, why stir things up? Paul says he's trying to protect the family. I don't want conflict." "Conflict?" I held up the folder. "He's trying to erase me for money." She shook her head, eyes watery. "Please go, you're upsetting me." The door closed, soft but final. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Alone. Even at church, where I'd ushered for years, people avoided me. During coffee hour, the pastor patted my shoulder awkwardly. "Daniel, sometimes we have to let grudges go." grudges. That's what Paul had reduced my fight for truth into, a petty feud. By Sunday, I was a ghost in my own life. Work colleagues doubted me. Family ignored me. My son thought I was crazy. My mother turned me away. And Paul, he thrived. He posted pictures of new golf clubs, dinners with clients, smiling selfies with Ethan at a ball game. My son, sitting next to the man who had weaponized Claire's memory. Each image twisted the knife deeper. One night, Ethan came home late. I asked where he'd been. He shrugged. With Uncle Paul, he gets me. He listens. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake. Instead, I just sat down, defeated. Paul wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing my son's trust. The isolation was total. Every avenue of support, every ally had been poisoned. But isolation sharpens resolve. Alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, I realized something. Paul thought he'd buried me in silence. But silence gave me time. Time to study the forms, trace the lies, see the cracks. And I swore, with every beat of my heart, that I would drag him into the light. Proof. That was the only antidote to Paul's poison. I started with the application itself. I'd seen thousands in my career, but this one had tells. The ink weight on my signature line wavered, as though traced. Claire's C loop was too tight. Hers always swooped wide. I scanned the documents and sent them to a colleague from my early days at the firm, Reena Patel, now a respected forensic examiner. She called me 2 days later. "Daniel, it's bad. This isn't sloppy. It's calculated forgery. But the spousal signature? That one's impossible. Claire's been deceased. Anyone who touched this file should have flagged it." "Unless," I said, "they were paid not to." Reena paused. "Exactly." She wrote me a formal report. Signed, notarized, the first weapon in my arsenal. Next came the medical records. The application included a health certification from a clinic across town. Except I'd never stepped foot there. I drove over, asked for patient files. The receptionist frowned. "We don't have any Daniel Price on record." Yet the form bore the clinic's letterhead. With some pressure, flashing my own industry ID, I convinced her to call the doctor listed. He sighed into the phone. "We've had issues with that broker. Fake forms using our letterhead. You're not the first victim." He emailed me a statement. Weapon number 2. Then came the witness. I tracked down an old coworker of Paul's from his short-lived logistics venture, a wiry man named Derek. We met at a diner. Over coffee, he admitted, "Yeah, Paul bragged about flipping policies. Said his brother worked in insurance, so he had an inside track. Mentioned he'd cash in once you were out of the picture." Creeped me out. I quit soon after. I slid him an affidavit form. He signed without hesitation. Weapon number 3. But evidence in a folder was only half the battle. Paul thrived on narrative. I needed to hit him where he preened, in public. Opportunity came faster than expected. At church the following Sunday, Pastor Miller invited Paul to speak about responsibility and family stewardship. Paul beamed at the podium, spinning tales about sacrifice, painting himself as the protector of our family's legacy. When applause swelled, I stood. "Pastor, may I say something?" All eyes turned. My hands didn't shake as I opened the folder. "My brother speaks of stewardship, but here's stewardship. Forging my dead wife's signature to take out a $2 million policy in my name." Gasps cracked the sanctuary. I held up Reena's report. "Forensic analysis confirms the signatures are fake." Then the doctor's statement. "This so-called health certificate, fraudulent. The clinic never saw me." Finally, Derek's affidavit. And this man, Paul's own co-worker, testifies Paul bragged about waiting for me to be out of the picture. The silence was suffocating. Faces turned from Paul to me, back again. Paul stammered. "This is slander. Daniel's unstable, But Pastor Miller cut him off. "Enough. These are serious accusations backed by documents. We will not ignore them." The congregation buzzed, whispers spreading like wildfire. Aunt Marianne, who'd parroted Paul's lies weeks earlier, crossed her arms and glared at him. I closed the folder. Believe what you want, but the truth doesn't vanish because Paul says so. I walked out, leaving him standing red-faced at the altar. By that evening, screenshots of the affidavits circulated through family group chats, the same ones I'd been kicked out of. This time, cousins forwarded them to me directly. Is this real? Did Paul actually forge Claire's name? The tide was turning. Proof had given my voice weight again, and Paul's kingdom of charm was cracking. But I knew him well. Cornered animals don't lie down. They strike, and the real strike, I feared, was still coming. Wednesday morning, my office line rang with a call from compliance. "Daniel, we need you to come in," my director said, tone clipped. I walked into the conference room to find 2 investigators and a stack of papers. The lead investigator slid them across the table. "Mr. Price, we've received notice that your brother filed a complaint alleging you manipulated insurance records for personal gain." I nearly laughed. "He's the one committing fraud." The investigator's eyes were flat. "Regardless, the complaint triggers review. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation." Suspended. 20 years of spotless work, gone with a single forged accusation. Paul hadn't just attacked my family, he was burning my career to ash. Driving home, my phone buzzed with another blow. "Ethan, Uncle Paul says you might go to jail. Should I come stay with him?" I pulled over, gripping the steering wheel until my palms ached. Paul wasn't stopping at erasing me. He was stealing my son outright. That night, I called Rena, my forensic ally. "He filed against me. He's flipping the script." She cursed under her breath. Classic misdirection. "But Daniel, there's more. I checked industry alerts. A payout request was submitted yesterday on your policy. $2 million. Beneficiary, Paul Price." My chest iced over. "But I'm alive." "Exactly. The request was paired with a report of your disappearance, a car accident. Your vehicle found abandoned near Lake Ray Hubbard. I double-checked. No such report exists. He's fabricating." The room spun. Paul wasn't waiting for time to bury me. He was manufacturing my death. I called Marianne, my attorney. She picked up on the second ring. "Daniel, breathe. We can block the payout, but we need hard proof before the insurer's fraud division steps in. Do you have anything that ties Paul directly to the fake claim?" I thought fast, then remembered. The voicemail. 2 nights earlier, Paul had butt-dialed me. 30 seconds of muffled conversation. I'd almost deleted it, but now I replayed it, hand trembling. Paul's voice clear enough. "Get the paperwork in. The car by the lake makes it airtight. By the time Danny figures it out, the check's cut." I forwarded the audio. Marianne's reply was instant. "That's it, but we'll need to play it where no one can spin it. Somewhere public. Somewhere he can't shout you down." The reunion dinner was set for Saturday. 50 relatives in one hall. Paul would be there, preening, smug. He thought I was finished. Perfect. Friday, Ethan came home, arms crossed. "Uncle Paul says you're dangerous, that you'd ruin the family to save face." I opened my laptop, hit play on the voicemail. Paul's voice filled the kitchen. "The car by the lake makes it airtight. Ethan froze. Color drained from his face. He's trying to— Yes, I said softly. He's trying to cash in on me. And he used your mother's name to do it. Ethan's fists clenched. What do we do? I closed the laptop. We show everyone, all at once. For the first time in weeks, my son nodded in belief. If you're listening on Revenge Stories Menu 50, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Thank you. Saturday night, the reunion hall buzzed with chatter. 50 relatives filled folding chairs, plates stacked high with catered barbecue. Paul stood near the head table, hand on Ethan's shoulder, smile plastered wide. My blood boiled, but I held steady. The folder in my hands was heavier than any weapon. Mom tapped her glass. Paul's asked to say a few words about family resilience. He cleared his throat, voice dripping confidence. This year's been challenging, but I've done everything I can to protect our family. Hard choices, financial safeguards, sometimes misunderstood, but always with the family's best interest. Applause rippled. Ethan glanced at me, jaw tight. I stood. Before we applaud, I'd like to share something of my own. Paul's smile flickered. Daniel, not here. Exactly here. I laid the folder on the table. $2 million. That's the payout my brother tried to steal using my name. Here's the forensic report proving Claire's signature was forged. Gasps shot across the room. I held up the notarized statement. Here's a doctor confirming the health certificate was faked. Here's a former co-worker swearing Paul bragged about waiting for me to be out of the picture. Paul's face flushed crimson. Lies! He's desperate. I raised my phone, thumb hovering over play. Then explain this. Paul's voice spilled into the speakers, captured in tinny audio. Get the paperwork in. The car by the lake makes it airtight. By the time Danny figures it out, the check's cut. The hall erupted. Aunts gasped. Cousins cursed. Someone shouted, You tried to fake his death? Ethan stood, shaking, but his voice rang clear. Uncle Paul forged Mom's name. He tried to erase my dad. You all need to hear that. Silence fell heavier than thunder. Paul lunged toward me, hand outstretched. But two uncles grabbed his arms, holding him back. Enough! One barked. I pressed forward. This isn't paranoia. This is proof. He filed a payout on a living man. He planned a staged accident. He forged Claire's name, turned family against me, stole my son's trust. And now it's over. Paul thrashed. But the room wasn't his anymore. Cousins whispered into phones, calling police. Aunt Marianne muttered, Insurance fraud. Prison time. Mom covered her face, sobbing. Paul, how could you? His voice cracked. I did it for us. For the family debt. No, I cut in, steady. You did it for greed. The sirens wailed outside minutes later. Officers strode in, took my phone, logged the voicemail, and cuffed Paul as relatives stared in disbelief. He shouted over his shoulder as they dragged him out. Danny, you'll regret this. You'll be alone. I shook my head. I already was. You made sure of it. But now everyone sees the truth. As the doors closed behind him, the hall buzzed again. Not with applause for Paul, but with murmurs of shame and apology. Eyes turned toward me, not with suspicion this time, but recognition. The mask was gone, and Paul had nothing left but handcuffs. The reunion ended in fragments. Plates abandoned, kids shuffled home, whispers following every step. I stayed behind, gathering the papers I'd laid bare. Proof was heavier than shame, but it was mine now, not Paul's. Ethan walked beside me in silence. When we reached the car, he spoke at last. Dad, I'm sorry. I believed him. I thought you were losing it. I looked at him, my chest tight. You had every reason to doubt. He's been feeding you lies for months. His voice cracked. But I should have trusted you. I pulled him into a hug. For the first time in weeks, my son clung to me, not to Paul's shadow. Later that night, as I sat at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Paul's voice rasped through static. Danny, it's me. Just one call before they transfer me. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The debts, they were crushing me. I thought if I could just get the payout, I'd fix everything. Please, tell them you don't want to press charges. Please. I closed my eyes. Memories rushed in. Him forging Claire's name, smearing my reputation, turning Ethan against me, planning my disappearance. You didn't try to fix things, Paul, I said quietly. You tried to erase me, and you almost succeeded. Silence stretched. Then his voice, small. You're my brother. I know, I whispered, but being brothers means something. You threw it away. I hung up. The phone lay heavy in my hand. Forgiveness was a question I couldn't answer tonight. Maybe never. But one thing I knew. Trust, once shattered, doesn't glue back together just because blood says it should. When Ethan came down for water, he caught me staring at the phone. Was that him? Yeah. What did you say? I looked at my son, at the future still intact because I fought back. I told him no. 2 weeks later, the county courthouse finalized the charges. Insurance fraud, forgery, attempted false claim. Paul's lawyer tried to spin it as desperation, but the evidence was ironclad. The forged spousal signature alone guaranteed prison time. I didn't attend the arraignment. I didn't need to see him led and wearing shackles. I'd already seen enough. Instead, I spent the morning at Ethan's high school, watching him present his final project before graduation. His voice was steady, his smile unbroken. For the first time in months, I saw my son without Paul's shadow hanging over him. Afterward, Ethan and I grabbed burgers at the diner Claire used to love. He dipped fries in ketchup, then looked at me. Do you think Uncle Paul will ever change? I thought long before answering. Maybe, but change won't bring back what he tried to take. Trust isn't something you rebuild with apologies. It's something you protect by never breaking in the first place. He nodded slowly. Then we move on? Yes, I said. We move on. That weekend, I boxed up Claire's old papers, the marriage license, the letters she'd written me, and locked them in a safe deposit box. No one would ever forge her name again. Not while I breathed. I sold the house where every corner reminded me of betrayal and bought a smaller place closer to my office. Fresh walls, fresh air, no ghosts. Neighbors introduced themselves, not knowing my story, not caring. I was just Daniel, the guy moving in with his teenage son, and for the first time in years, that was enough. One evening, I sat on the porch, Ethan beside me scrolling college applications. He leaned over, showing me a screen. Dad, I want to study criminal justice. Maybe work to stop people like Uncle Paul someday. I smiled, pride swelling. That's a good path, one where truth matters. The sky darkened, cicadas buzzing in the warm air. I felt the weight of the past months lift, piece by piece, until all that remained was clarity. Paul had gambled my life for money. He forged my wife's name, stole my family's trust, tried to turn my son against me. But in the end, he lost everything. And me? I still had Ethan, my integrity, and a future no fraud could erase. I choose me. Tell me what you do. Drop your story and subscribe Revenge Stories Men U50 USA.